Are there any other announcements? Okay. I do got one more. That piano's throwing me off. I found out last week that my time here at Marissa has come to an end. My last Sunday will be the last Sunday of this month. I had talked to Reverend Walker some time back about wanting to be closer to my parents or my family, just because holidays are particularly hard, because it's a fight with my sister every single time. It's like, you need to get up, you're being selfish, and you know the kind of argument. I will be moving. My last Sunday will be the last Sunday of this month. I will be moving out of the parsonage on June 28th. I will be taking over another 3-point charge, but it acts like a 2-point charge, meaning 95% of my time I'm at 2 churches, and once a month I'm at the 3rd church. I will be pastoring Kincaid, Edinburgh, and Mount Auburn churches, between basically Springfield, Taylorville, and Decatur. I'll tell you later too. Okay. Yeah. I'm looking forward, just because I will be closer to my family. It'll kind of ease some things up. Because I told her, it's like, if you either move me close to the northern border or close to my family, either or. But if not, I'm still going to serve it regardless. But I think it'll be a good move. I will still have I'll actually have more district responsibilities, given I'm so close to our new district office. So part of it too is I'll be in charge of leadership training, courses, so on and so forth, upon some other things with the district office. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, the one thing I'm looking forward, no offense to Marissa, they have high school football and Friday night lights. Well, here's the awesome part of it. I know one of the coaches, because he coached me when I was in high school. So I have it in there. Thank you for being my first charge. I know it hasn't been easy. I know, but I've grown a lot. I hope you guys grown a lot. Yeah. Eileen? Yeah, there is someone. This person is brand new pastor as well, from what I've been told. They are local, but I'm not sure where local. I don't know that much. So all I know is this person's close enough by where they don't need to be in the parsonage right away. That's how close they are. So they will eventually move into the parsonage, but I got to get out first, and then they got to clean, and well, hopefully I clean everything so the church don't have to do that much. But there is someone for this charge already picked out. Yeah. Thank you for being my first charge. And thank you for everything you taught me. Who's my scripture reader for today? I want you guys to make a note. Part of the sermon is kind of heavily on Genesis, chapter 1, verses 1, all the way to chapter 2, verse 4. In no way or shape or form was I going to have Sharon read all of that.
Thank you.
Though it did cross my mind. But just add that to your own writings for your own study. Just giving you a heads up.
Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded to you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God. And that was Matthew 28, verses 16 through 20, just to let you know. Good morning, church family. as I stated earlier, I didn't catch the big 75-pound kitty cow in the river. I was very disappointed in it. But I did catch one fish, so. Oh, no, it was about 10 pounds. Though the farmer told me to put it back. But anyways, today is not only Holy Communion Sunday, but it's also Trinity Sunday. And usually our inclination is to explain God in the Trinity. And right now we have to resist that inclination to describe God in the Trinity with all the sort of metaphors and what have you that we use to explain it, because the sad truth is they fall short every single time. It's like if you're on the golf course, you got the hole right in front of you, but your ball just does about left right into the sand bunker, or whatever you want to call a place where the sand is. It just doesn't work out and just falls short. But we set aside these 2 weeks of Pentecost and Trinity Sunday, and we hope that those Sundays are inspired awe in our worship. Our task as Christians is to open folks up to the amazing world that is God. We describe God as a Trinity because this is how God is experienced, but not really understood. Certainly we can and need to sort of theologize or wrestle with understandings and interpretation about the Trinity, and Bible study in small groups will be a perfect place to do that. But here today, though, we can walk with each other through the gallery of God's glory. Not just to gawk, however, but to be inspired, to be filled with the Spirit. And that Spirit is a sending Spirit. Our text even tells us today. That was read. But maybe we should start at the beginning. We got a bit more than the whole first chapter of Genesis, because what's the first verse in Genesis? In the beginning. But why would the lectionary preparers choose that Hebrew text for this Trinity Sunday? Because I follow the lectionary. It's just what I do. I prefer it. But do we see the three-in-one God at work here in Genesis? Do we experience something of that completeness, of that wholeness, as we work our way through the familiar account? Genesis 1 says that when time began, God was. When creation came into being, God was the cause. The water here is like an incubator, the womb of God out of which creation is birthed. The NRSV translation says, the wind of God swept over the face of the waters, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters, as our NIV text says. But have you ever heard of the Message, the Bible Message? Written by a guy named Eugene Peterson. It's okay, but it takes really bad liberties in certain areas. But I like what he says when it comes to Genesis here. The Message says, God's Spirit brooded like a bird above the watery abyss. And I kind of like that. Brooded. How many of you guys ever had chickens before? No one here's ever... Okay, we got two people with chickens. Man, we need to just start handing out chickens left and right. But anyways, Dorothy and Eileen, you know how broody hens are when they got eggs on it, and you try to take said eggs? I know how to solve that. Around the head. But those hens, they're real broody. They're really protective of their eggs. Sometimes they'll fight tooth and nails, like, you ain't gonna take my eggs. Sometimes. Usually they just peck at you. But like a hen tending to the eggs before they hatch, like a mother waiting for the time to give birth, God tends with creation. God calls it forth into being. But wait, is it the Spirit that is the creative force of God or of the Word? The Spirit brooded, the Word was spoken, and there was. Even in the Gospel of John, the first chapter, verse 3, it says, all things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. It was the Word that brought forth light, And then it was the Word that pronounced it good. When we sometimes forget that part of the story, though, we wrestle over creation itself. We argue with theories. We sometimes forget the goodness that is part of all that God has created this day. Or maybe we forget what good really means. God saw that it was good, but the light was not yet complete. The sun hadn't been made yet in the story. The moon and the lesser light, meaning the stars, were still on the drawing board. But yet it was still good. Goodness must mean something other than finished. It must mean something other than perfect as we define the term. Perhaps it means born of God. Perhaps it means process, growing, moving on towards perfection. On the way to order out of chaos. Order out of chaos. Light in the midst of darkness. And the light was good. And there was morning, as Genesis tells us. When you didn't think there would be another one, there was still morning. Thanks be to God for every morning that we receive this day. Genesis 1 verse 6 says, "And God said, let there be a dome in the midst of the water, and let it separate the waters from the waters." The waters represent chaos, the unknown and unknowing. In the ancient world, sending sailors to sea was a traumatic experience. The ritual of sending was like a funeral, and the return was like a resurrection. Who knows what is going to happen out there? Who knows whether those who are sent will ever be seen again? And now we think in our present modern world, we have tamed the seas. We think we can harness the power of God in our own hands, and yet every hurricane season, every monsoon season, we are reminded of how strong these storms actually are. We are reminded by the rising waters. We are reminded by the gusty winds. Our once confident, easily confident minds are now troubled during those times. What will our coastline look like in 50 or 100 years? By separating the waters, God was staking a claim as Lord of chaos and order, saying, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. Our God this day is in control. Genesis 1, verses 9 through 13 says, "Then God said, let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seeds in it. And it was so." How many of you got a garden right now? Whether flower or veggies? Good. Let the earth put forth. And God enlists the aid of creation and an act of creating. God invites partnership in creation. Work with me here, God is saying. Get on board. Though perfectly capable of creating solo out of nothing, God instead chooses to invite participation in the act of creation. Let the earth bring forth, and it was good. And there was morning. The Genesis story stands in opposition of other creation stories. Many have pointed to similarities and believe that it diminishes the story that we know. But Genesis makes its claim regardless. God is the only deity. Notice that the sun and moon do not have a name in this story. In other tales, there are gods themselves, but not in Genesis. God is the only power, the only light. The light rules only because God put them there. And it was good. The story, of course, goes on for 66 books. And for thousands of years, it goes on even today. When we find ourselves in the midst of chaos, attempting to throw off order. It goes on until the day we find ourselves forgetting that there is a purpose to our existence. It goes on the story to the next morning and thereon. And that's the blessing here. It was evening and it was morning. A new day. Another day. When you were sure that your failures meant that the sun would never shine again, it crawls over the horizon, even so today. God set it all in motion and invites us to be part of it. Whatever dominion meant at the time, it now must mean caring for. It must mean stewarding, as you go with the gardens. We participate in God's act of creation by making sure that it lasts as long as it can. Whatever subduing meant, it now must mean partnering with the earth to bring forth enough to feed the teeming billions in the world. And why? Why are we calling to participate in this act? Why are we privileged or burdened with the extra responsibility or promise? Because we are made in God's image this day. We are given the story, so we know. We know that everything there is did not come about because of us. We know that our main mode of existence is one of gratitude. We know that we are all, and all we have belong to the one who said, "Let there be light." That's where things get interesting, or in code, messy, or complicated, whichever word you want to use. Because we are invited to participate in God's ever-continuing act of creation. We are called to join in. We are called to go. It's time to go. You've heard that said a few times in your life. I know you have. You said many times to go. Let's go. Can we go? Ready to go. If you don't get your butt in the car, we're going without you. Questions, statements, promises, pleading, go, has a lot of moods, lots of attitudes to be said. It's hard to deny the excitement inherent in go. It just drips the possibility with newness. Go into a new world, a new reality, a new way of being. Who could say no to go? The horizons are calling, and the world is yours. Just go. Go and see. Go and live. Go and be. A new chapter is a new beginning, but also a continuation of the story. Of course, then, we want to go. But there is an other side of go. To go, you have to leave. To move toward a new tomorrow is sometimes to leave a comfortable or an uncomfortable but familiar yesterday. To embrace the call to go is to turn your back on stay. It is to leave behind those who have become family, even as you stride into an uncertain hope, a possible joy. Now we stand on a mountain with the remaining disciples here in Matthew as they wait for whatever might be coming next. And mountains in the Bible is basically a signpost like, hey, stop them. Okay, we're not going to hold the sign so high. We're holding a sign in front of our face saying, hey, heads up, something big's about to happen. That's what mountains were like in the Bible. They weren't so much as what we know as the Rocky Mountains or the Appalachian Mountains. By the way, it's Appalachia, not Appalachian. You say that in West Virginia, they'll leave you out in the woods. But there's signposts saying something big's about to happen. It's a dead giveaway, or rather a living one, so to speak. Mountains are alive, as one author had put it, not just by the sound of heavenly music coming off it. No, mountains are alive with the presence and the power of God. Standing on this mountain, the disciples were about to change forever. In fact, the whole world was about to change forever. Not that they knew that moment, all they knew is they heard the word go. And there's some important information in these verses from the end of Matthew's gospel. And we want to get right to the crux of it, to go, the Great Commission. And that's certainly understandable. That's where work is. That's where the call is. We are part of a denomination that takes as its mission the understanding that we are able to be making disciples for Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And that is a bold statement in our hymnals or even on the internet. And we say it like that, with emphasis, with fervor and passion. But let's admit it, during these times, with desperation. We're losing our grip on what we have been, and we are certain about what will become. So we cling tightly to the Great Commission for the salvation of the church. And we hold it so tightly that we squeeze the life out of it. It has become our weapon, our sort of Irish shillelagh. Y'all know what a shillelagh is? How many of you have seen Gangsters of New York? Oh boy, y'all need to start watching movies. It's basically a club that comes up and there's like a big old ball on the end of it that hurts like a you-know-what. Just look up Irish shillelagh when you get home. Google it. But anyways, we use it to bludgeon, to force a resurrection of the churches we were once upon a time in our memory. It comes down, I believe, to how we hear the word go, and all authority has been given to me, Jesus says, to drive his point home, to sear into their souls, so that they would bow to the King, scuttle out of the mountainous throne room to do the bidding by hook or by crook. At least that's what we think. But go and make disciples. Whether they want to be baptized or not. Even if you have to take them, hold them underneath water just for a little bit longer till they quit squirming. I'm looking at you, little one. I'm kidding. I wouldn't do that. But after that, then you teach them to obey. Put them in their place. Put them under the thumb and under the heel. Make them good. Make them pure. Make them right when all they seem to want is wrong. As Larry the Cable Guy says, get her done. Finally, someone recognized it. And if you're squirming to hear those words that I just said, I hope so, because I was squirming when I wrote them. But the truth is, that is the attitude of many faiths and churches, even today. The Great Commission to them is a license to hate, to wield the sword, to put down, to look down, and come down on those who don't measure up. You're going to hell and there's nothing you can do about it, they say. But is that what Christ calls us to do? Is that what he wanted us to do? I don't think so. Matthew says that with what sounds like a certain amount of sad honesty, it was 11 disciples who gathered on that mountain. But did you notice, maybe he hoped you wouldn't, the writer, but 11, there were 11. They were broken. They were incomplete. One of them turned, betrayed them, threw it all back in their faces, and pushed to make something happen that wasn't going to happen, or pulled down the curtains to reveal the smoke and mirrors of everything that Christ had done. At least, that must have been what Judas thought. But John says it was the enemy, that he was infected, disease. And we can't blame him. He was a cancer that was cut out. And let's point the finger, as the church says, and let him take the blame. It absolves us. Our betrayal can't remain hidden that way. Our weakness, our failings, pale before his. But Matthew doesn't seem interested in blame, but just in truth. The 11 disciples gathered on that mountain, carrying their wounds, failures, their disappointment, and their fears. Even when Jesus appeared, he says that they worshiped but had some doubts. Really? You have some doubts? The resurrected Christ is literally standing before you. I'm not talking about you guys, I'm talking about the disciples, because I am not God. But Christ is standing right before you. How can you still have doubts? He's up on a mountaintop. He's about to ascend to the right hand of God. How are you still doubting? We aren't told what they doubted. Was it him, themselves, the mission that was being handed to them like a hot coal from the fire? All the above, or something else entirely? Who knows? We don't. Except that we do, maybe. Because we have them too, those same doubts. That sense of inadequacy. That feeling that maybe we shouldn't force someone else to believe what isn't within them to believe. Maybe we should just keep it to ourselves, that sort of faith thing. Keep it quiet. Don't make waves. Don't disturb the neighbors. Live and let live. That's the better motto. Better than go. Anyways. But then maybe we got the tone all wrong in terms of the Great Commission. Maybe it isn't about being triumphant over people. It's like, I conquered their beliefs kind of thing. Or better yet, you know how the British were in the 1700s? Yeah, we fixed that in 1776. America. Okay, enough of that. Not by being right, but being how we should talk to them, converse with them, by being whole. Maybe Jesus meant that all that happened was just shown that his way of life, his teaching, were indeed better way to be. That if we were thinking right, we couldn't keep it to ourselves, even if we tried. It will leak out of us as we live in a world as fully alive human beings. So, Jesus says, live intentionally, live outwardly. When Jesus says make disciples, he doesn't imagine an anvil coming upon of which we are to take them and pound them into shape. Instead, he imagines a relationship of sort, as God has called us in the beginning. He says, go and spend time with people. Value them. Learn from them. Know them. Help them. Tell them what makes you fully alive person that you are. It isn't a course that you take online and get a certificate or diploma. It isn't a way, it's a way of living that we are always growing into, like creation itself. The goodness is found in the process. Make disciples as you are being made into disciples. Baptize them. That sounds formal and ritual and everything, but maybe there's something more. Baptism means cleansing, washing. Maybe Jesus meant less about the rite of the church and more about the process of being made clean. Peeling off the surroundings of the self-centered culture and scraping away the stuff-centric life and immersing ourselves into the community of the Creator God, the Redeemer Christ, and the Sustainer Spirit. Give them something else Jesus was saying to live by, to be defined by. Give them me and who I am. He said that with that trademark 1,000-watt smile, as we can imagine. Teach. Oh yes, teach them obedience. Not by their will, by breaking their will, or by beatings and repetition, but by passion, joy, and encouragement. Go, he said to them and to us. Go and trust that he knows how hard that is. That to go forward is to leave something behind. That to accept the call to go is to live with the uncertainty and the sense of what if and why not. It is to embrace the goodness of God in spite of all those doubts. Trusting that the new place, the new world is a mountain of potential and power and the presence of God. Maybe the real call is to live into go, rather than to jump and run to meet some sort of deadline, because we have known failure. Go is harder to hear. Harder, but not impossible. Because with God, all things are possible. God was in the beginning. God is in the present. And God will be in hereafter. So with God, all things are possible with him because he created it. And he invites us into that creation. Not only caring for the earth, as we know, as gardening and everything, but to care for one another because we are his creation. We are made into his image. So we should care for one another, love on one another, comfort one another, whether you believe in God or not, because that is living out God's kingdom. So my friends, this day, though this is not my last Sunday here, my last Sunday is the end of this month, to share one last communal meal with you. I leave you with this. Go and make disciples of all nations this day. Amen.